Lewis Hamilton goes from 10th to 1st, despite Crofty saying he went from last to 1st, keeping the championship alive until the very end of the season. Max Verstappen takes 2nd after a mega drive to keep that Mercedes behind him for as long as he did. And Danny Rick unfortunately retires with power unit problems. G'day there. My name is James Baldwin and welcome to another episode of Lakeside Drive's F1 podcast. In this episode, we're reviewing the Brazilian Grand Prix. Joined, as always, by my friends and yours. It's Campy. G'day, mate.
Gentlemen, how are you?
Doing very well this early hour. And Tommy T. Hello, friend.
G'day. How we doing?
You're doing very well. We're changing how we do business. Nice Lakeside Drive coffee mug, to be honest.
Hey.
Yes, where's mine?
Cheers, boys.
Thank you. Thanks, Tommy T. Yeah, that's fair enough. I guess when I hated on you guys so much last year for being King of the North, King of the Free North. Geez, that went well
King
for
without
me.
a mug.
I want a throne of mugs, damn it. We're changing how we do things. So this is now being recorded straight after the race. We are moving back to first thing Monday morning recording times. It means we're moving away from a live stream though, but it means the audio goodness gets into your ears a hell of a lot earlier, which the three of us yesterday decided was a much better idea. So let me ask you a favor, dear
Tell
listener.
us if we're wrong.
Yeah, exactly. All three of you, if you're not happy with that, please tell me. You can reach out via any means necessary. Email, you can get onto Instagram, probably is the easiest way, and DM us. One of us will be able to read it and get back to you. But also, we're just trying to figure out how to grow the podcast, but also how to keep it going in a good direction. So if you find an opportunity to talk about us to some of your friends, if you're on Reddit and you see a Formula One thread saying what's a good F1 podcast, it honestly makes a difference if you mention us, because that's where we're sort of lacking the most in that sort of awareness element. But apart from that, we're doing pretty well. Discord went off this morning, Campy. I think you were the first of the three of us to say good morning. What time was that? About like 3:30?
3:30, yeah. I'm a morning person. I don't mind
That's
the morning.
not the morning, mate.
Shout out to our people in the West who was 12:30 for them and drinking some JT and Coke
At the casino.
It's just very, very full on. But yeah, shout out to Discord. Great to have you all on there. And massive shout out to you if you've left us a rating or review. Here's one from Live Diamond in Australia.
Oh, no.
They say, I love this. DR fans of the world unite. This is Campy really enjoyed this, can I just say, when we sent this through. I'm going to read this in full. If the mockumentary character Kenny had an F1 podcast, this would be it. Campy is more Kenny than Shane Jacobson. And the other two blokes are all right too. Keeping Campy on the straight and narrow is no mean feat. Tommy T, I'm taking that as a massive plus for us.
Massive win.
In fact, Shane likes his cars and has a podcast too. I can feel some crossover episodes coming on. Well done, lads. The difference is the podcast that he's on is terrible and I don't like listening to it.
I've got a good Shane Jacobs story if you want to hear.
Yeah, go on then. Go on, Shane.
Quickly. Where I was in the chemist and this chick's like, I know you. I'm like, not sure you do. She's like, yeah, you look like Shane Jacobson. I was like, oh, yeah, he's my dad.
He's my dad.
Anyway, good.
That's my Shane Jacobson story.
What a great story. Thanks
It's
so much
grim, bloody hell.
for sharing it.
I thought I was a 10. I'm clearly like a 4.
That's your yardstick for measurement is Shane Jacobson.
I've got this HD cam now. I'm looking good, you know.
Yeah. With your Lakeside Drive mug
Trimmed
in
up
HD.
beard.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well, you trimmed up. Does that mean that, is it slightly more intelligent or slightly less? I can't remember
Less
what Brian
aggressive,
said.
I think it was.
Less aggressive. Sorry,
Less
it wasn't
aggressive.
anything to do about intelligence. My apologies. Campy.
Anyway, keep
right.
me on the straight. Keep going. Move forward. What a race it was this morning. Bloody hell. How good was it, lads?
It's good to be back at Interlagos, that's for sure. We didn't think, did we, only a couple of weeks ago, Tommy T, that we'd even be back in Brazil.
I still don't know how we are. to be honest.
Well, as everyone said in something to do with F1's lead into the weekend, it goes to show how far Formula One have come and all the safety protocols in place. It's good. It just means that Daniel Andrews, that it means wherever they go, even to a COVID-stricken country like Brazil, they can make it work. Geez, I wonder if they could make it work in Melbourne next year. They bloody better is the short answer. All right, Tommy T, I know it's fresh in your mind, so let's do your television broadcast review. What did you think of the broadcast for this race?
You're going to be disappointed because I didn't watch much of it, guys. I woke up exactly for the race start, like everyone probably else did. Didn't get to see much.
I was committed.
Yeah, well, you give us a bit of a rundown. You take over. What did I miss, Campy?
Great anthem this morning on the piano.
It was a grand piano on the pit straight.
No singing in the anthem. Just, I mean, the pianist had gloves on, which looked a bit strange.
What
Couldn't
key
really
were
get
you
my head
in?
around that. D minor.
How do you feel?
There's a few sharp sixes in there. A few musical geniuses out there like myself. So
coming from a bass player, I don't think musical genius has ever been used as a term in conjunction with a bass player, except for bass players talking about other bass players.
We had a good flyover. We had some nice colours in the sky painted across that. I don't know what they were, Jim. What were they?
A29 Super
A29s.
Tucanos, which I mean, they look like Pilotus PC7s, which is what we had last week. Just some more fighter trainer aircraft. They were late though. Again,
if you were running it, James, what would you do?
Like
would you organise that to finish exactly as the anthem finished? Would you time it
100%.
perfectly?
That's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be the last note of the anthem, and then you have your whatever. If it's a military thing, you have your present arms, and for about a beat and a half, and then boof, fly over. But make it jets. So if you're late, you can either go hard or slightly. Anyway, whatever.
So you can use
more jets.
More jets.
More
is what you're
jets.
saying.
That's all I want. And
More
just 2 or 3 F-18s. We don't need to have lots of crappy fighter trainer like roulette kind of things. No one cares. Just give me like the hardcore, the best jet you got, and then
What's
put
your
yourself
best?
in the bin
Show
afterwards.
off. It's a show off.
Exactly. What's your best? Because I know the Brazilians are better than that.
Are you basing your thoughts on their armed services based on their flyovers? Is what you're telling me? So if they come
100%.
crappy, you think you can take over that country?
Only just what it does is it highlights to me their defense policy,
Yes.
like who their neighbors are, and then who they will be relying on if anything was to go wrong. Mexico, for example, no idea. It's completely north and south. I'm like, well, we're here now. Let's see what happens. Not so good in the Air Force element there. But anyway, so in terms of commentary, then Tommy T, you were able to watch it. Well, how did we go with Dr. Brundle and Dr. Croft?
Brundle was good. Crofty. Classic him, just, I don't know, he's all over the place, isn't he? He kept saying that Lewis was coming from last.
He's been listening to us.
Does he think this was a
listening
2-part
to
race?
us.
Did he assume that yesterday was just part 1 and today was part 2 starting from last? So he quite clearly started from 10th today in the race, not in the not race, whatever was yesterday.
And he backed himself in for a good 2 minutes talking about it. And Brundle was like,
dude. I feel like Brundle has a couple of those moments every week, doesn't he? Where he's like, how do I save you from yourself?
Yeah. To keep saying from 20th to 1st, it just wasn't the case, Crofty.
He just
went
wants it
from
to sound
10th to
good.
1st.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
And it was a little bit too much. Look, let's not underplay the fact that it was a great overtake.
Yes.
Absolutely. And especially considering he got pushed off the track a little bit by Max and got a lot more of debris and dirt on his tyres than Max did because he just had a slightly wide line coming out of that corner.
Yep.
But like, come on. Like, I know we talk about the British bias over and over and over and over again. It's interesting, though, can I also note, Campy, that this is the first time all year we've heard Max being booed by the crowd, like big-time Lewis fans here, even to the point where he grabbed the Brazilian flag off one of the marshals, and that was the marshal's favourite point of the season because he was jumping up down like a jackrabbit after he was driving off, which was interesting.
He said that post-race too. He goes, the first time I've had fans behind me and supporting me since Silverstone, so we've probably seen some Max-centric crowds since then.
Get over it.
Tommy, are you Dutch by any chance?
I am.
Give him,
Bloody am.
Give him his moment in glory. We had Brundle on the grid talk, actually, on the grid walk. He got Toto, and Toto alluded to some facts that we probably add into our discussion yesterday about this rear wing,
Yes.
which we struggled to. I listened to it back. I very apologise for the way we stumbled through that conversation. It wasn't very coherent, but we got there talking about sticking things in as a measurement. Didn't really give it all the detail. I say me. I apologise for me.
The royal we.
The royal we.
Hey, we're a team, boys.
We are.
Oh, yeah,
That's
okay,
all right.
sorry, Shane.
Team.
Do go on.
Yeah.
So I wasn't aware that the problem that Mercedes incurred on their wing was actually, according to Toto, damage. So read into that what you will. He's also frustrated because for the last 3 races, Red Bull have changed their rear wing in parc ferme conditions. And they've changed. I mean, you're allowed to change things in parc ferme conditions if there is a problem with durability and they don't think it'll last the race. But for that to happen 3 races in a row, and then Mercedes cop the penalties that they got yesterday in qualifying and then take their 5-place grid penalty in the race and lose 3 points because of this stupid format, I'm sitting here, I'm not a Lewis fan. I don't really want him to win the championship, but I want this championship to go down the wire.
Yep.
I wanted him to win tonight and today against all odds. Those extra 3 points that they give in that sprint race really should have gone to Lewis, right? So then that means it's not 14 points now, it's 11 points, and he possibly could have had the fastest lap, depending on how far ahead he was in the Grand Prix, because it's the sort of pace he had this weekend.
Yeah, he did.
I think Mercedes were a bit robbed this weekend, and I think there's a bit more to play out in this story, because I think Mercedes might have some things up their sleeve that they're willing to use. I also think it's tactical for Red Bull. I think they've had this up their sleeve for about 5 or 6 races, and they're just like, we're going to pull this out when they beat us on track in qualifying and have the right stuff moving down.
Yeah.
They should have used it in Mexico, but they didn't need to. Very, very interesting, this whole saga. I think there's a few more pages to turn, boys.
There it is. So, Tommy T, then overall, from what you saw, give us your broadcast review score.
Give it a 5. It was fine.
5?
It wasn't Mexico was bloody
After a race like that, bloody hell.
I'm not
Tommy.
talking about the race. This is about the broadcast, Campy. Come on, the race can be way better than that. But
You didn't even watch it.
it's the off track stuff.
Campy, this is the Lakeside Driveway. You know this is
Oh,
the
no,
case.
Campy, when have we watched anything or been informed in the slightest?
The final score is 5 out of 10
Yes.
points. With
Under
Campy
protest.
putting up a protest, exactly right.
We'll go to the
Fair
stewards
enough.
and you can shut up.
Let's talk about the overall talking points, lads, before we talk about our team-by-team analysis. I think probably the biggest point to talk about, we've already started talking about Campy, which is this rear wing debacle that has sort of continued. We know that Red Bull in Christian Horner getting out on the front foot and trying to be not as aggressive as possible, that's the wrong word, but certainly trying to be out there and say, look, we're going to fight this tooth and nail to the very end. And Toto clearly very frustrated this weekend, to the point where Hamilton overtook Max Verstappen and Toto found the cameraman standing outside the garage and pointed at him. And it was just like, yes! And I've never seen Toto, in all the years in Formula One, I've never seen him behave like that. So there's clearly a lot of tension here, Campy, isn't there, in terms of what's going on at the front. And as we've said time and time again, we want this to go down to Abu Dhabi, the last lap. That's going to make this championship incredible to watch. But what do we think, Campy, comes out of this from a team perspective? Because the drivers obviously do the talking on track, but are we going to see more of this aggression inverted commas, between Mercedes and Red Bull?
Oh, absolutely. I think every week there's going to be a new story. I think that people are going to be employed full time to be looking at absolutely every part of the Red Bull and the vice versa to the Mercedes to try and find something wrong with them and nitpick it. That's where we're at the season, and that is ultimately what could define the world championship at the moment, and both of them, constructors and drivers. So, from our point of view, I think constructors is a secondary championship to the drivers. It's good for the teams, but we don't really care about that as fans. So, look, it's very interesting what will happen. I think it'll deteriorate more, and it'll just get sour and sour, and it's probably going to be a bit of a reality TV show played out. The pinnacle of motorsport, really. It's going to be pretty interesting to watch. We go to the Middle East, and we've got 3 races down there. And I'm thinking Merck's top line pace, particularly in DRS tracks, particularly Jeddah. We've got 3 DRS zones on that track. I mean, I think it's all looking up Mercedes at the moment.
Yep.
So
look, we
deteriorate and will get good. But
Tommy T, it's very fair to say I think that we don't necessarily want Lewis to win the championship. Happy for Max to take it, but again, at the very end, as Campy alluded to before, we're not massive Lewis fans. We just want the best racing possible.
Yep.
Does the best racing possible, though, look like that little incident that happened between Max and Lewis coming around that corner where, very funnily enough, there was no footage of inside the car, which I found incredibly bizarre that Ant couldn't get his hands on to digest. Look, it is only just after the race. I'm sure that'll come out later. But for your mind, was that fair enough? Is it like, we want to see these elbows out? I mean, I'm asking a Dutchman here, so it's not going to be one way, I guess.
You're going to get the answer that you want. No, I think I think it is fair enough to get elbows out. I don't think that was, especially when you do have runoff like he did, I think that is when it is fine. If we're talking walls going through Monaco kind of city track stuff, different conditions for that kind of style of defending. But I think the carry on from the commentators and everyone else about not having this angle, implying that Max changed his steering angle and stuff is just all conjecture until you see it. Like they're just winding it up. And that was what was annoying to me. I was like, geez, we haven't seen it. It probably is there or not, but like you don't know. So stop making stuff up. It's almost worse than actually having seen him do it.
Because we know. We do know because the trajectory of Verstappen's car throughout that corner was not turning; it was straight.
Yeah, that's it.
So we know what it's going to be, but
but I think
for me, it's a racing incident.
Yeah, exactly. They were suggesting he opened his steering angle more into Lewis, which you don't have evidence of. So just I don't know. They carried on for laps and laps and laps, and we can't find it. Where has it gone? Red Bull's hidden the bloody footage. I don't know what they're doing. They're just causing all these conspiracies. Like, settle down. And then they pointed out that obviously Gasly, I think it was Gasly, had a similar move, and they're like, see, and you can see the steering angle on here. So where's the footage from Max? It's like, oh God, like Red Bull sitting there. Geez, I'll look like an absolute tit if I'm wrong, and Red Bull has done something dodgy, but I don't think that's what they're doing. You look like an absolute tit,
regardless of what you're doing.
I just don't think they're that nefarious to be bloody tampering with footage because that's out of their control. That is all going. The direct feed goes straight to the world feed. They have all of the footage. It's there somewhere. They will get it. They will look at it.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. That is not even a possibility. Sky F1. I think Sky F1 is trying to be Netflix sometimes too often as well. I like they've seen how that drama really played out for that viewership.
Yeah.
Just remember, guys, you're trying to be neutral. If you ever realize and figure out how that is, do let me know. I said that would be possible at that too.
What do you mean?
Look, the sport has come a long way. Go back to Santa Prost and they just crash into each other to take each other out. That's not going to happen these days, but these are the types of things that Max can do. I mean, he never had that corner. He never had right away. He didn't leave Lewis tracked like a car's width, but at those speeds, 300 kilometres an hour, braking late, I mean, we're talking about minute. In order to drive like that and push Lewis to the absolute limit in the way that he did shows you how good these guys are. But I just think it's a bit cheeky. I don't think I don't think it's the right way to race. But in saying that, let it go. Lewis got the win. If he didn't get the win, I think I might have had a different opinion on it. But
playing the result, Campy.
Look, you guys know me. I'm not the biggest Lewis fan, but I'll tell you what, I was rooting for him tonight. That whole underdog, everything's against him. 25 place grid penalty on a stupid sprint race weekend.
Came from 70th to first.
Yeah, I mean, I told you that freight train was coming, and Max just about held it up. Mate, this is why I love this sport because, I mean, to start 10th and then get back to third in like 6 laps was unbelievable. There was some genuine pace in that Merc. And to follow, we know the Merc's not the greatest car to drive behind someone in turbulent air, but so to do that for as long as he did behind Max Verstappen, then finally get the gap, and his tyres were absolutely cooked by then to string out a 10-second a 10-second win after that. It's a pretty special drive, but this is what we love it. I mean, Max did everything he possibly could. Strategy came into play. Red Bull made all the right decisions when they had to. They called the Mercedes bluff and bid it early. And look, I mean, everything, and Merc came out on top, and that's what we want to see. We want to see these races for the last 3 races going into it. I would love someone to cross the line, world champion, and then when the other person crosses the line, they're world champion, and the person who crosses first didn't get it. A bit like the Hamilton Massa situation in 2008, I believe. Lewis alluded to that in the post-race chat when he was talking to Felipe Massa too. So, I mean, this championship is, look, it's right there. Look, we just need to enjoy it for what it is. Yes, we can get cynical, get grumpy about certain things, because it is the tail end of a very long F1 season.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to get cynical really early sometimes, but we just need to shut up and enjoy what is happening on track between these two drivers.
Goodness me, Campy, that is so well said. Look, he went to go have some coffee. There's none left. Straight to the whiskey. You're absolutely right, though, in terms of being positive. And didn't we say at the very beginning of this season for us that we were trying to remain not cynical, Campy? And I think we've done pretty well.
Look, I was a bit grumpy yesterday. So
you were. And
it's funny, that's all right.
Look, it was funny.
All Blacks lost yesterday.
And you also didn't give us the warning to not poke the bear, so Tommy went right ahead there and just poked away. With good results.
It worked.
My other talking point is Max, when he was told about the black and white flag, he clearly had Amy Shark's I said hi in his mind, because he just said, just tell him I said hi.
I didn't get that reference. Can you explain that too?
Yeah, if you listen to music past 2004, you probably would.
He just listens to Linkin Park on repeat, mate.
Linkin Park.
Campy, you look like a Linkin Park listener, let's be honest.
Look, the hybrid theory's all right. Everything else after that was shit ass.
Wasn't your favourite album Joshua Tree?
Mate,
you love you too.
No, it's not my favourite album.
Anyway, let's keep going.
Yeah, right, we could go into that. Linkin Park came after the 90s of all like Rage Against the Machine and the greatest grunge acts ever. And then you get Linkin Park who come out with a bridge that says "shut up" in it. I'm like, what is this? We've just been told, the Rage Against the Machine, fuck you, I'm not doing what you tell me. And then we get a "shut up." It's like, what? This doesn't compare. This is rubbish.
Jeez, I'm glad we went down that tangent. It just gave me more editing.
I apologise.
So let's talk about team by team, shall we? Let's start at the very back of the pack with Haas. Mazepin finished higher than Schumacher. Schumacher obviously had some issues halfway through the race, but 17th and then 18th for Schumacher. Campy, we spoke a little bit, I suppose, yesterday, didn't we, about Mazepin and how everyone has viewed him. He will be happy with this result, not that it was necessarily merit-based.
Yeah, I think Mick had his incident with Kimi Räikkönen, was it, off the start?
Yeah.
Just got a bit through the centre S's. So, yeah, look, I think Mazepin was on the pace this weekend comparable to his teammate. And, look, unfortunately for him, he didn't have a competitive car and he can't race against anyone else, which is a shame. I mean, that's really how we judge these guys. But, yeah, look, he's got another year in this sport at least. His dad's going to pay for it. Rich Energy's coming back, can confirm. So
that's just chaos, isn't it?
Shane Jacobson, CEO of Rich Energy.
Crazy, right?
It's not happening.
Anyway, look, this kid's got time in the sport, and he may be a Lance Stroll. He may pull some results out when he's got a car that, potentially okay.
Yeah.
Gunther Steiner came out in the last couple of weeks, said he's quietly confident we can get back to where we were when we first entered the sport. And that would suggest, I mean, they've put zero development into this car this year. They've got a good base that they're working from last year, comparability. I think they're getting some of their off-track stuff, like their simulators. The simulators clearly getting better from what I hear. So Gunther's going into next year. They put all their design, all their monetary focus into next year. So let's hope they come out on track and they are back where they were 2 to 3 years ago.
Geez, I'm glad to hear Gunther's still alive. We haven't heard from him for a very long time, which is good. Anyway, let's keep going. We'll talk about Williams. Nick Latifi in 16th. George Russell made it up to 13th. It's kind of unfortunate. I was hoping for Latifi to finish ahead of George after a good result through Saturday. But really, I mean, talking about teams who are probably now just focusing solely on 2022, these guys, Tommy T, aren't really worried about the rest of the year, are they?
No, I think they've moved on. I think, and they're hopefully focusing on Nick Latifi because Russell is moving on. You would stop developing this car, I think, weeks before this anyway. So I think we're just going to see no more upgrades, run it out, mitigate any more costs. Don't wreck a chassis if you don't have to. Just things like that. Like bring the car home safe, basically, is what we're looking for. But what they can do is work with Nick Latifi and his engineers and the team for better communication, better kind of feedback during those practices and the races and those kind of things. So, because that stuff is still going to help next year. So that's what they will be focusing on. And then squeezing any last little bit out of Russell before he leaves, I think is key as well.
Yeah, it's well put. And it's a good point as well, Tommy T, about whether or not the information sharing between both sides of the garage has necessarily been as free-flowing. Campy, certainly now Williams' attention is going to be totally on getting all of the data from George's car and trying as best as they can for Nick Latifi, which, as we've said yesterday in the Pre-Drinks podcast, is a good thing because Latifi, we think, is getting better and better and comparably to George. And look, George is a great talent. Let's not mess around about that, especially in the Williams where he's done good qualifying sessions. But this race pace element for Nick is the important thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And he can definitely get better. I think Russell's got it over him clearly in race pace, but he's getting better and he's growing. But interesting too, the gap between Alfa Romeo and the Williams and the points in the constructors is insurmountable for, I mean, technically it's not, but I don't think Alfa Romeo can bridge that gap. So it just means that Williams can be a bit more aggressive when it comes to race strategy and qualifying and stuff because they don't have to worry about money. They know they're pretty much set in what's happening, so they can be a bit more aggressive on strategy and try a few different things as well. I think races are going to look very different to what we have this year as to what they look like next year. I think we're going to have races a hell of a lot like Monza where you get a slower team out front that, there's almost going to be a big train. And, these front teams have had it pretty good over the last 7 years where they can go longer than everybody else and get that pit stop gap before the teams behind them pit. And we're talking about the 1 and 2 teams in the championship being able to do that. Next year, we're not going to be able to do that. So I think for Williams, they would be trying things strategy-wise for next year as well. I think they're firmly looking at that, and they'll just be getting a better understanding of how races are going to play out, particularly in the positions that they are. They've got people closer in front so that, undercuts and overcuts can happen, but what's behind them, the traffic's behind them. So I think they'll be getting that stuff right as well.
And it's going to be the first example, isn't it, of these budget caps because this year hasn't really been the same because we've obviously got a lot of technology still coming into the end of this turbo hybrid era. And as Valtteri Bottas said on Beyond the Grid, and I said this yesterday, great interview, great chat, is like anything can happen in this sport. F1 turns around so quickly. Look at what happened with Mercedes coming up really out of nowhere, and the fact that Hamilton just took a punt from a team with rich history from McLaren to go to Merck, and the punt paid off for him. You just never know. So that's, look, as I said, I really want Valtteri Bottas to be driving that Sauber Alfa Romeo, waving at George Russell as he laps him. Let's talk about Alfa Romeo now, though. Kimi Räikkönen in 12th, Giovinazzi in 14th. Gio probably wouldn't be having a great weekend after seeing that downtown Shanghai Alfa Romeo dealership with that poster on whatever it was about, if it was going early or whatnot. Does it indicate that the decision has been made? Maybe. Is it just someone going early? Yes, as Tommy T said yesterday, the local Ford dealership owned by Shane Jacobson saying Danny Rick's now driving monster trucks for Ford.
Exactly.
Could be a thing.
Let's do it anyway.
But really, for Alfa Romeo, though, Tommy T, this sort of fight around the last championship point is sort of heating up because we're seeing now, in my mind, and it was interesting seeing during the race, you go, right, well, there's 2 Mercedes, there's 2 Red Bulls, there's 2 Ferraris, there's 2 McLarens, and it really leaves not a lot of room for everybody else.
Totally.
Pierre Gasly's been the one that's sort of been fighting around that point. If something happens like DR obviously stepped out, it opens the door a little bit for potentially somebody else to come in, but it's always kind of just there, and it's Alpine that got the better of them this time, but generally they've had some good comparable pace to that Alpine this year, but they've sort of been flying under the radar a bit.
Yeah, for sure. I think they've definitely, second half of the season as well, they've been good with that upgraded power unit that they've got. I think Kimi was probably on for points if he didn't get unlucky today with a bit of contact here and there and just some position stuff. He's great around here, isn't he? He
started from the pits too.
Yeah, that's it. So pretty outstanding for him to have done that. You just say he's unlucky not to have got further up, but yeah, I think that's probably the nail in the coffin for Giovinazzi, isn't it now? If your teammate starts from the pits and you can't beat them still, that's a rough one.
Yeah, it was interesting. Kimi, they cut to Kimi in the garage just before while everyone was lining up, and then he made this hand motion of like he wanted someone to come to him. And the guy came with the air gun for his face. He's like, why would I want that at this point? And did some kind of like motion, and the guy was like, oh, sorry, and went back to get something. But we cut away before it came back, and I just was like, was it the steering wheel again? Is that what he wanted? It's like, time. I literally can't get out of the garage, you moron. I hope there's some radio from that. That would be good to hear. But we're going to miss Kimi. I know, completely different podcast. We obviously just had Valentino Rossi's last outing. I think he's now 72 years old on that MotoGP bike. Kimi Räikkönen, of course, only now has a handful more races to go in his Formula One career. I think we'll do a lengthy review episode, probably a 2 or 3 part review of the 2021 season, but we'll dedicate a good amount of time to talking about Kimi Räikkönen and his achievements over the last 46 years that he's been racing in Formula One. But certainly we will miss him on the grid, but it's good for Valtteri to be going to that team. One fin for another. So good for that. Sad for Gio. We'll see what happens with him. I suppose IndyCar is probably going to be calling him for next year if it's not just Ferrari reserve driver. Let's talk about Aston Martin because Seb Vettel had a absolutely amazing start. It has to be said. At one point he was up into 5th, but just didn't have the pace to carry through. Obviously a lot of experience at this track, Campy, but he ended up in 11th. And it's just going to show again that pace of the Aston Martin just isn't comparable to these top teams. Again, probably with their new campers focusing on 2022.
Nope. I think they'd be very disappointed with the season they've had, particularly with the season they had last year. Vettel's had some good results at times, but on a track where passing's easier than it is on other tracks, your race pace is really, it's true colours show, right? I think they've dropped off. They've obviously, where are they in the constructors? I'm just trying to think. They're probably,
fighting
5th?
with AlphaTauri.
They're fighting with AlphaTauri. So, Alpine, AlphaTauri, and Aston Martin could be 7th.
They should be fighting with McLaren, let's be honest. Like, that's where they should be.
They should be.
Yeah.
So, it's a failure of a season for them. Vettel shows glimpses too of what he can do. And, if he was in a good car, those results, he can get driving up the road and see how he goes. So, interesting. I think he'd be hanging for this year to be finished and reassess and look at next year and what's happening. So, as for Mr. Stroll,
contact with Yuki.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, it was Yuki's fault, definitely. But look, it's a bit like when Stroll took Verstappen out. It's one of those ones. It's like Hamilton said, but you're in the lead of the race. You should be experienced enough to just let a guy like that through, otherwise it's going to cause you problems. For me, it was a bit of role reversal in that. Yes, it was a bit of youthful exuberance. Yes, he had the line and he didn't have to give Yuki a car's width because of the position of his car, but you know what? Just do it because you should know now where you are. It's going to ruin your race. You should know who you're racing against. Do you know what I mean? And there's a bit of that for me, which Stroll lacks a bit of common sense or street smarts at times. And I think no way can you blame him for the incident, but there's a bit of the same thing in there where it's just like, hey, just.
No, I think you're spot on. What's the point of being right and in the garage? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I know. Right. Yeah. Totally. So, a bit of experience for him this year. He's had a shitter. He hasn't done anything good this year. Like the 1 in 5 sort of race I predicted.
1 in 23, maybe.
Not even.
I think he's going to have to. Look, he'll be in the sport for a long time, and he may get a car that's really competitive one day, and a bit like a Lotus of maybe the 11, 12, 13 era and, fight for wins and podiums. But, look, I don't think he's getting a spot in one of the top teams. He'll be working for his old man for the rest of his career.
For reference, Alpine's in 5th at 112, tying with AlphaTauri, who's in 6th on 112, and Aston Martin's on 68 and 7. So good luck to them. They're not getting anywhere near those two teams. It's 7th for them.
They're the 7th best team on the grid.
And then,
huge turnaround from last year.
If we had told you that at the start of this year, people's mouths would have dropped considering the year that they had last year.
Yeah.
So, that's astounding. Lawrence Stroll would be pretty shitty, but hey, that's what happens when you cheat, isn't it? So catches up.
The campus is being built for that reason, the dominant comeback. Look, I hope so.
Campus for ants.
I hope so for Seb Vettel's sake. Let's talk about McLaren. Danny Rick bowing out due to a power unit issue. He lost output rather, and had a warning message flash up on his steering wheel that said "cool the car," which is never a good thing. This sort of plays in a little bit. It was mentioned in commentary about the Mercedes reliability issues that are potentially going to be plaguing the cars towards the end of this season. Obviously, we don't want to see that on Danny Rick's car, but potentially would have been making Lewis Hamilton a little bit nervous if he hadn't have taken the upgrades that he did this weekend.
Yeah.
Tommy T, from McLaren's point of view, though, obviously the start was not so great for Lando Norris. He was held up by the Ferrari. It was never going to go that well, putting 2 tyres on the grass. I think he just thought he was further past
silly,
Carlos.
Yeah.
And, Carlos did the right thing, get on the radio going, well, I couldn't do a hell of a lot there. I don't know if it was an apology to Lando for after the race for him to listen to because this Carlando attitude or whatever it was. But for Danny Rick, though, he was actually having a pretty decent race. This VSC, although didn't quite get the best of the VSC because it ended just as he was coming out.
It ended just as he was going in.
My apologies, going in. It worked for Valtteri Bottas because it was ending just as he was coming out. Other way around. Good play by McLaren to try and get there. He ended up coming out ahead of Lando, which is fine because he had to pit anyway, and that would sort of seem to be the vibe of where they were going for. But for McLaren at the moment, Tommy T, we mentioned this yesterday. They're losing their. They don't even have one hand, I don't think, on that third place anymore, where we've consistently seen this Ferrari pace come from Russia onwards. For them now, it is just about damage limitation in terms of points. Are they going to be happy with 4th, do you think, or it's going to be very disappointing?
It's going to be so hard because I think these last 3 are going to be heavy on how well you qualify, and we haven't seen them qualify well against Ferrari in these last couple of races, have we? So I think that's going to be the issue. And the race pace is definitely in Ferrari's favour as well. So yes, you can't pass, but if they've got the pace, they're just going to destroy these McLarens.
It's 31.5 points, by the way, between them now, which is more than a race win.
That's it. It's getting larger and larger. And if you're kind of at the back end of those points, like it's many, many races to catch it up and you're just running out of races left. I think like we mentioned yesterday, and Campy made a good point, so did you, James, those development tokens that McLaren used early in the season are now just stitching them up, aren't they? They've just run out of stuff they can do. They've used all of their tokens and now they're just going, we're just going to limp to the end. Hopefully it was enough. But it doesn't seem like it's going to. I think they should still be pretty happy with the season they've had. They've had a race win. They've had a bunch of podiums. They've done really well. They've had some reliability issues, which is actually not their fault. That's their engine manufacturer. So at least they can kind of point fingers and it's not kind of internal and it's not their structures going wrong. It's the engine supplier. So that's at least they can kind of go, we're on the right track. That'll be better next year. This will be better next year, and kind of start to look to the future because let's be honest, they knew that this was always going to be a tough season, taking a new engine in this weird, like half regulation change, half not. So it's literally all to play for next year. And I would expect to see them pushing for that 3rd or 2nd kind of constructor, if not higher.
The only thing that McLaren did well this weekend was have Zach Brown and Mika Hakkinen at Laguna Seca in old McLaren F1 cars. Yes, Zach Brown got into what I think is Lewis Hamilton's 2008 McLaren, and Mika, from what I can see, was in his 2000 and the video's
99.
Very quick. 99 McLaren, not 2001. 99 McLaren, and just Go
West.
on to Zach Brown's Instagram right now and just watch his first video.
How
on
do they
loud.
get through the corkscrew? How?
Look, best not to ask any questions, I suppose, at
Just
this
jump
point.
it?
Who cares?
Just leap.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
I guess just cutting. Anyway,
Just
whatever.
run the ride
But
height
it just
really,
sounds
really
amazing.
high.
That's all McLaren did
Yeah.
very well this weekend. Let's just look at the positives of that.
Totally.
But Lando again finishing in 10th, another just single point weekend for them.
Yeah.
And especially considering I didn't move Ferrari again, Sainz 6th, Leclerc 5th. Like if they consistently finish in that points, it is sayonara to that third position. Campy.
Can I just say, look, Danny Rick got a cracking start, but he put it on the grass too. He had nowhere to go, got squeezed wide, so that's why he got swallowed up. I know he made some points up, some positions up on the first lap. He had a good fight with Ocon, and he eventually got in front of him. But his fate was really sealed yesterday. You know, he needed to do what Norris did yesterday and then capitalise on that start again. I think the inside line is definitely where you want to be.
Yeah. You saw
on this
Hamilton
track.
just.
Yeah, but look at
Used to be the
Bottas.
outside, though.
Sorry, look at Verstappen's start on the inside. Bottas was clearly better, but anyway, I think they should look at changing that maybe for next year. But look, Danny Rick's race was compromised by Gasly. When that virtual safety car came in, if he had got the full effect of it, he would have come out in front of Gasly and he would have been 3.5 seconds behind the Mercedes. The problem was he was stuck behind Gasly, couldn't get past him. And, I mean, by the end of the race, or by the time he retired, the Ferraris are 25 seconds up the road.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a shame. But, look, we had a good race anyway. So I really wasn't super fussed where Danny Rick finished this weekend because it's been a bit of a stinker of a couple of weeks for him. Not anything that he's done in particularly wrong. Just I mean, motorsport happens.
Yeah.
I mean, Norris, good result. I mean, he got lucky with the safety car.
Yeah,
I want to talk
definitely
about
helped.
safety cars. I brought it up on the Discord chat.
Yeah.
What on earth are we having safety cars to clean up the track for? Give me a like. I understand being safety conscious and people on the track, but a bit of carbon fibre floating around. Give me a spell. Like, we've just gone way too far in that other direction. Like, this is the first time I remember that we're bringing out safety cars and virtual safety cars to clean up carbon fibre. I know there's a small bit of issues with punches and stuff like that, but come on, give me a spell.
But it was good for some people.
Didn't we try and use composite materials this year so that there wouldn't be carbon fibre flying off like it used to?
No, I think they just said that because it
some
sounded
sort
good.
of plastics or rubbers in it so that, you know, the car would stay intact to some level. I mean,
Something like that.
I mean, Formula One is a great sport, but
I've
far
got
out,
a
we
plan.
get some things wrong.
I reckon we do
Go
one
on.
safety car lap with Campy sitting on the back with a big compressed air gun and just blows it off like a big thing, and then we just keep going. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me the
wouldn't be a
fans.
safety car.
turbos.
It'll be
Just get
an
four turbos hooked up with a big bloody big 250 mil hose or something, and all we need is like a
Campy in an
vacuum cleaner
F350,
pile and
just
blows
driving
it
around
off.
the
Yeah.
track.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah,
Just a jet turbine.
Window
just to
down.
Melt it all.
someone in
left arm out
Texas
of the thing, big bloody hat
This-
on. His RM,
you know what?
absolutely Iron Williams, everything, including massive flaps out
Massive
the back.
mud flaps. Yeah.
Yeah, and the big bull horns
Yeah.
on the rear window.
Sign
Oh,
me
calm
up.
down. The Troopy will have 35s on it. Don't worry about that. That'll
Okay,
be good.
there we go. We're trying
just
to
get
get
the-
Formula One to pay for the for.
No, you know what? There'll be a guy in Texas going, I've got just the thing for you, baby.
If you have just a thing for us, please write in. We would love to see that. All right. Apart from safety cars, yes. Although I didn't mind it because it just meant that the field could bunch up again before we then had the inevitable overtaking of like 5th and 6th.
It was
position.
mentioned in the broadcast too. Only the 13th safety car we've had this year. That's lower than I thought we would have had.
Yeah. Yep.
Very interesting.
It's been
Considering we got like 3 in Monaco.
there's been very few, which has been good. Like the racing has been fine.
We've
I
had a lot
suppose,
of red
but
flags though, let's be honest.
Well, it had too many red flags. That's the
Safety
case.
conscious.
Let's talk about Alpine.
Get rid of the halo.
Okay,
Yeah.
we've had like 7 deaths this year alone. Alpine, Fernando, 9th, Ocon, 8th. A good weekend
Did they
for
swap
them.
at the end?
Well, I must have.
I was
don't know.
watching the timing
Who
sheet and it
knows?
looked like towards the end that Fernando let Ocon through. Don't know why.
Yeah,
Unless
well,
he
I mean,
made a
Fernando
move
is-
on track, but I definitely saw a switch. Anyway, continue.
Fernando is ahead in the point. Maybe it was just across the line coming with DRS. Who knows? But anyway, good for Alpine this weekend. This is something we didn't mention yesterday, and I want to bring it up now. The link that Otmar was going to Alpine from Racing Point, from Aston Martin, very bizarre, to the point where he had to come out and put out a statement to say, despite all of these very serious media outlets, including Autosport and others, linking me to Alpine, it's just not true. It's not going to happen. Now, this is the kind of sport that next week I expect the announcement that he's going to Alpine to be the race director. But Campy, I mean, you could probably have a better insight into Lawrence Stroll's head than anyone else, considering you're Shane Jacobson. What would he be looking at in terms of Otmar to see what he does this year? Has he been happy with him? Does he move him on to try and pull someone else in? Is Cyril potentially in the sea? Who else could he possibly pull in?
Cyril's good. He'd be a very, very competent person, but do you want to go and work for a guy like Lawrence Stroll? If you gave me the choice about who you go and work for, whether it be a Renault or an Alpine or anyone except Lawrence Stroll, I think, you know what I'm trying to say.
An engine manufacturer or a racing team, Tommy. He was very correct.
He was correct, wasn't he?
Yes, Renault E-Tech.
Look, if I had the choice, he's probably playing the game absolutely how he needs to play it at the moment, and he's probably coming out because Lawrence Stroll's not somebody you want to double cross. You want to do the right thing. So him coming out and saying that, there could very well be some truth to the rumours, but would you really want to work for Lawrence Stroll? Probably not.
Might even be being pushed
particularly when Lawrence Stroll is clearly the one that made the decisions at Racing Point for them to emulate the Mercedes car from last year. And it paid dividends for them last year. But the problem is this year it's failed, and now Lawrence Stroll's going, it's not my fault. I pay you guys to fix these problems, get better and better and better. And it's the first year as the Aston Martin branded team, and, he wants results. I mean, we're not saying he's a stupid businessman and he's not smart. Some of the brands that he's turned around, you don't become a billionaire because you're dumb. He's obviously got some business nous in him, and he's pretty ruthless like that. But, in this day and age, do you want to work for a guy like that? Absolutely not. He comes across as bit of a prick, which you may need to be a billionaire, but it's not winning your friends and influencing people, is it? So I think Otmar's clearly gone. I hope he is for his sake, because I like Otmar.
Yeah.
When that Racing Point was owned by VJ Malia, and it was, the camaraderie within that team and where they were on the grid, considering the resources they had, pound for pound, they were the best. They were the best racing team in Formula One at some level with the results they got.
Yep.
So, and when Checo left, he said to Vettel, he said, you are entering a pure white racing team.
Yeah.
These guys love it. It's not because they're there for big money, because I doubt any of them are on big money. Checo wasn't even on big money there. I mean, most of his money came from his sponsorship and the deals that came out of that. He wasn't a pay driver. He wasn't bringing money to the table, but he was, they're running these things on a smell of an oily rag. So for Lawrence to come in with all the money and then keep moving on, I just think it's Lawrence Stroll's fault totally. And, Otmar's a good guy. Keep him in the sport.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. It was just a random comment that was made, I think, to someone, and then it was followed up by a couple of articles, and then there was lots of links, and then there were sources, and then again to the point where Otmar had to put out a statement. Is just very interesting. I mean, silly season from a team side. We know, of course, that the Red Bull powertrains guys are trying their best still to get some of those Mercedes guys across the line as well. But anyway, good result for Alpine for this weekend, especially in that fight with AlphaTauri. But AlphaTauri, Gasly 7th, Tsunoda 15th. Tsunoda, not a bad comeback considering he was right at the very back of the grid just to get past those couple of other cars at the back.
Yep.
But Pierre Gasly, 7th, good performance for him. Again, he's been floating around that sort of 4th to 7th to 8th for a good couple of races.
Yep.
He had some decent pace in that car, it has to be said. Certainly, he was the one holding up Danny Rick, Campy, as you alluded to. But overall, Tommy T, what do you think of Gasly's race?
As always, Gasly's solid. As much as Campy wants to deny it, and he hates the guy, I don't know why. It's really just
I never said he wasn't driving well and he wasn't solid.
It's just in the
I didn't say that. I said you hate the guy is what I said. Because that's what you do. It's got nothing to do with his talent. You just friggin' hate him.
Hate's a big word. Hate's a big word.
Nah, I think
big word.
he's single-handedly keeping that team in the constructors, isn't he?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, totally.
The fact that AlphaTauri is where they are, I would imagine, is purely because of his ability to get results. I mean, he's sitting ninth in the in the drivers' championship, only a handful of points behind Danny Rick.
Yep.
And Danny Rick's won a race. Yeah. So, in terms of that, how that plays out, 112 points for AlphaTauri. Gasly, this probably the most. I'm trying to see if there's any. No, good. Thanks, F1 app. That was a useless bit of information. For the breakdown, it's good for AlphaTauri to have
definitely.
Especially when this is the second week in a row that Tsunoda's had some damage to the car. Not necessarily his fault, of course, in Mexico, but certainly that late lunge, although would have been great if he could have made it work. Yeah, not so good.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think they're going to be looking positively to the future as well, especially with they're going to receive that Red Bull engine next year as well that's going forward. And it's been great, that Honda power unit this year. So you hope that it continues into the future and they can be somewhat more of a, maybe like a McLaren to Mercedes or something like that is what we're hoping, at least for Gasly's sake, because he deserves that opportunity as much as Campy doesn't want him to have it, apparently. But he's great and he's deserving that next drive, but I don't know where he goes, like we've mentioned many, many times.
Yep. We'll just have to see how the whole grid plays out and who, is the fastest car next year. We just won't know at all. The only thing we'll probably know for sure is that the AlphaTauri just won't be as fast as the Red Bull. That's kind of the it.
Gasly will remain in the bin. That is a constant. Death taxes, Gasly in the bin.
For this podcast, yes. Let's keep going. Ferrari, as mentioned, Charles Leclerc in fifth, Carlos Sainz in sixth. These guys are very good at sort of parking in the middle of no man's land and letting the leaders have a good crack. And then the McLarens or whoever behind, in this instance, the AlphaTauri of Pierre Gasly, just sort of flail around a bit. It's a good result for them. And certainly from 2019, this is the consistency that they've been looking for. Campy, don't you think?
Yeah, I think they'd be disappointed with some of the decisions they made in 2019, which have put them so far off the Red Bull and the Mercedes. But I think they're primed to bounce back pretty quickly. The engine's pretty good. I think it's just car development that year that they went down this road, which didn't work. That's really halted their progress. I think the engine's pretty comparable to everything else, so they tell me. So it's just car and their philosophy on going fast. But, I mean, Ferrari is an institution. It's been a while since they won a world championship.
A long while.
You look at the domination of some other manufacturers, and I can't see Ferrari. I mean, it could happen, but I can't see them winning a world championship next year. I think the front runners will clearly be Mercedes and Red Bull. I think they'll be in a fight with McLaren again. But I mean, anything can happen. I think they're going to have to. Someone's really have to change that organisation from the inside out. But they're heading in the right direction, and fifth and sixth. I mean, 30-odd seconds in front of the nearest car behind them. But they were, I mean, Perez pitted to get the fastest lap. So that's not indicative. But, they're another really in no man's land, another 40 seconds behind the Red Bulls and the Mercedes. So good weekend for them, considering where they are in the championship, but not where they want to be.
Tommy T, your overall thoughts? I mean, this is showing really good progress. We mentioned in the past that, McLaren seem to be good for next year as a result of the progress they're making this year. We would have to apply that same kind of logic, at least to Ferrari, whether or not they're right at the very front. Absolutely, can't be a good point. Or whether this battle between first to fourth really closes right up,
which
and
has
nicer,
that
really
it?
tight.
I think that'd be
100%.
Yeah. If we can have four competitive constructors, that's the goal.
Yeah, it'd be good to have these guys on a podium every now and then, along with McLaren, along with Red Bull, along with Mercedes, along with Alpine, or whoever. Really, at this point, let's just get as many different teams on the podium as possible.
Yep.
But overall, it has to be said, Ferrari have done a good job in the second half of the season.
I think the quieter Ferrari is on the social front, on like the media side of things, the better they're doing. We have not heard a peep, have we? We haven't seen Mattia, I don't think, other than a handful of race weekends. They are just staying out of the way. They're doing really good things behind the scenes, and it's netting positive results. I think they've got a really good driver lineup who are collaborative, and they're not so, trying to infight and prove who's the boss. I think they're doing a really great job. But yeah, so 8.5 points between them. Leclerc's just got his teammate covered at the moment, but yeah, I think they're doing a great job this year, and I'm worried for McLaren next year. I'd put it that way.
Yeah. Well, look, again, we like to see, though, this kind of progress. So that's important. All right, let's talk about Red Bull. Of course, Verstappen second, Perez fourth. Perez pinching that fastest lap away from Lewis Hamilton right at the very end, of course, which is sneaky, but he had the gap, didn't he, to Leclerc to be able to do that very, very easily indeed. But for Red Bull, they'd be happy enough, Tommy T, with this kind of damage limitation?
I think so. I think you saw Max struggling to keep Lewis behind for so long. And then when he got past, he had nothing left, did he? I think, I wonder if they could have done a different strategy, maybe held off on that pit stop. But I don't know. Yeah, to be honest, like I think this is a good result. He's still at the lead. But yeah, it's getting close. It's getting close.
Good. We like it close.
Yeah.
Campy, what do you think about Red Bull for this weekend? I mean, the pit stops were on point. They did everything right as they could.
Yeah, they just got beaten by a better team this weekend and a faster car. So 14 points now. I think. I think the 2 points Max got in the sprint race yesterday will help his championship victory. But 7 points, it's like the difference between first and second is 7 points. So, I mean, we're 2 races in it now. And, I think Crofty alluded to the fact that every time one of these guys wins, it's almost like a 2-win advantage, right? Mm-hmm. You're not only taking, but you're gaining. So, it's interesting. It's got some real ramifications at this end of the season. But good for them. They were solid all weekend, but just didn't have the pace.
And it's also good to see.
Perez could have probably done a bit better, but I mean, Perez and Bottas are pretty comparable, right?
Yeah.
But Hamilton, Verstappen, geez, it's just, what are we watching? I love this race. This was probably my favourite race of the season so far.
Well, take that, Monza. But from Perez, it's good to be in that fourth position. Is exactly where he needs to be now for Red Bull. And I'll say it again, I said it in the pre-drinks, it just looks like he's settled into this team. He's found his rhythm. The setup of the car is now working for him. The team aren't throwing him under the bus, and he's obviously a much more experienced driver than the other two guys that came into that car. I know. Well, they've clearly seen the mistakes that they've made, which is a good thing. And we've seen Helmut Marko completely disappear from the media sphere, which is also a good thing. But Mercedes, look, you got to be happy for Valtteri Bottas again to get another podium. Yep. Third, of course, Lewis Hamilton in first. We've said this right at the very top. It's a good thing for him to win. We're not Lewis Hamilton fans, but it just keeps the championship alive all the way through to the very last race. Campy, with only a couple of races to go now, though, you mentioned it just before, though, about the power difference between Mercedes and Red Bull. We're going to Qatar, then Jeddah, 2 tracks we've never been to from a Formula One perspective. Mm-hmm. And we just don't know what kind of downforce and power is going to be necessary. Do you think there is a real opportunity now for either Hamilton or Max to walk away at the next race with the championship?
Well, look, we're at that stage of the year, right, where something happens on track and someone spins and, it gets shunted back to last. I mean, they're big. I mean, they're insurmountable sort of differences, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, look, it's anyone's championship. It's going to be interesting to watch. I think
anyone's. There's 2 people.
It goes to the lot. Well, 2 people. I just hope it goes to the last race. That's really what I want to see. But it could be thrown away at any moment, and we never know. I think Mercedes have got some cards up their sleeves still. I think Red Bull's played them all.
Let's just look at this weekend. So Mercedes has come in taking an engine penalty. They've had this thing that's put Lewis to the back of the grid. Like everything going into, I suppose, the sprint race was saying that this was not going to be Mercedes. They were probably going to walk away with two Red Bull podiums and maybe maybe Bottas to get up there as well. To have this with a first and a third is absolute victory for Merc, and this is just classic Mercedes that we've seen over the last 8 years of dominance. This is just them pulling it out of the bag when they should have. They've got no business having 2 drivers on the podium after that kind of, if that was any other constructor, they'd be like lucky to get points. They've walked away with the double podium. Just outstanding. Yeah. And that is that constructor being, as Campy would say, consummate professionals, like for the last 8 years. And this is why Lewis Hamilton is in the race still for that championship.
Yep.
Well, they're hunters, right?
Yep.
And, led by Toto. It'd be interesting to be, a fly on the wall in these team meetings in terms of the vibe, how much it's changed. As I said earlier on,
wasn't he?
the way that he pointed to that camera when Hamilton got past Verstappen, that's a level of passion, I suppose, that we just haven't seen from Toto for a while. It means a lot for him to take this other championship. But look, it's good, as we've said. Let's see it all the way through to the end. Who knows what's going to happen in Jeddah? Brand new tarmac. We've seen last year, of course, with resurfacing a track only a couple of weeks before, that it turns into an absolute spin fest. Combine that with a lot of heat, though, from Jeddah, it's going to be maybe just a real super sticky affair. Who knows? It's going to be interesting because we don't know what's going to happen, and that's how we like it.
That'd suit Red Bulls with the downforce that they can generate. It's better, right? So, but the top line speed clearly is with the.
So what you're saying is it'll be a Merc dominated, because it's the opposite of what we think every time.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly right.
Who knows?
All right, well, that's our team by team analysis, lads. Let's go through the fantasy team names. A big thank you to you if you've got on and changed your fantasy team name ahead of us recording this episode. Let's start. Insert funny and topical team name later. Steen N, good job. Well done. Maz is at his PK. Raymond M. Mazepin's Quali Tears, David L. Brazilian Bottas Lift, Josh L. Hey Dude, DHL, Where's My Car? Haley H. Yas, Ural Khalif F1 team, Colin M. I like that we're just still getting Yas references in there. Well done, guys. Hass's Trophy Cabinet is as bare as a Brazilian, Lydia S. Brundle's GoFundMe for Max's Find, AAT, and couldn't think of a name. Nathan R., you're not wrong.
Love that.
This is no good for me. Campy in the lead, 27th. Tommy T, 43rd. I'm 77th. I'm going backwards, even though I've changed my team to be in a good position. I scored really well this weekend, and it's no good. Well, lads, thank you so much for this. And thank you to you for listening to this podcast. As I said at the very top, please do us a favor. Tell some people about Lakeside Drive. Go on to Reddit if you have an account and talk about us on the Formula One thread. We would appreciate your support there. But otherwise, you guys are all awesome for listening, for reviewing, for involving yourself, being part of the community. A massive shout out to Lewis and also to Josh for doing it. No, sorry, massive shout out to Lewis and Ash. Sorry, not Josh, a completely different person in my mind, but Ash as well, volunteering his time to do some social bits and pieces for us and strategy. Really appreciate that you guys wanted to be involved in that. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating or review if you can. But that's it for now. We will see you in a couple of weeks' time, of course, for Qatar. That's next. And probably another Team Radio podcast next week. Campy, what are your predictions for Qatar before we get there?
Danny Rick, Alonso Rockman.
Okay, good. Just now completely wizardry. Tommy T, what do you think?
I double down that. Yep, that one. Let's do
Excellent. All right. Well, yeah. I mean, me too. Who cares?
How can
Who
you
even cares anymore? It's going to be Hamilton or Verstappen on the front row. That's all we know.
No, they'll crash out.
Thanks so much.
Love that.
We'll see you very, very soon.